We'd like to welcome, especially our candidates, for making this wild ride to San Angelo, Texas. I want to thank you very much for coming. And we want to thank all of you that is here today. I was hoping for a bigger crowd, but you know how that is. But even with a small crowd, we can still get our message out. Push, the last push for the Democratic primary. I'm hoping that we can turn people out to the primaries like never before, because it's needed. I could stand here and talk with you all day about why it's needed. But if you haven't seen yet why it's needed, you're missing something. And I want to thank our county chair, David Perry. There he is over there. I want to thank our local chapter of NAACP President, Mr. Freeze. All right. I'm sure Mr. Freeze is going to be helping us push our people out to vote. It's very important. And if there's any ministers in the house, the same applies to you. You need to tell your people to go vote. You know, one of the things that I cry about all the time is when I saw, or when I see again, young people confronting dogs, water hose, but yet they marched for the vote. And they said one wonderful thing that stares in my heart today. I ain't gonna be turned around no more. I ain't gonna be turned around no more. But anyway, welcome. Well, that is all I have to say to you, and I hope you enjoy what you hear and what you may not hear. And we welcome the candidates here today very, very much. I give you my chair of programs, Mrs. Shirley Spears.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're so glad to see you, and we're so excited that we have a nice crowd here today for the first time that we attempted to do something like this. As our Chairman Hall has, thank you. As our Chairman has said, we are the San Angelo chapter of the Texas Coalition of Black Democrats, and I know that all the candidates are familiar with them because you all responded to the invitation, so thank you again. The Texas Coalition of Black Democrats, we had been showing some information on the screen for you so that you would understand who we are, a little bit about us if you're in the audience and you're not familiar with us. We are an independent democratic political organization that is under the direction of the Texas State Coalition of Black Democrats here in the state of Texas. There are several units of Democrats all over the place that have different causes and purposes. Ours primarily is the African American community, to learn, to talk, to share, to inform, empower, and educate the African American community about things that are important specifically to that community. So we appreciate you again for coming out this evening, and we're going to get started with our program. I'm going to ask the candidates to please come and take your seats here where your name cards are, and we'll be ready to begin in just a moment. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get going. I may need to move this. You all know I have a loud voice. Am I too loud? Okay. All right, so we're going to get started. I will begin by saying welcome again to the candidates. Our first round will be for you to introduce yourself in the order that you're seated, to tell us a little bit about who you are, what the position is that you're running for. You will have 3 minutes, and I want to make sure that my timer is prepared on the clock to make sure that you hold up the 1-minute card when they are approaching that 2 minutes? Okay, so we're going to get started with our first candidate, Mr. Ed Kimbrough.
Good afternoon. My name is Edward Kimbrough, candidate for the United States Senate from Texas. First, I'd like to thank the Texas Coalition of Black Democrats for sponsoring this event. And I believe this election can be pivotal in the future success of our national economy and our democracy because of our public debt that's drowning us and keeping us from doing a lot of the things we need to be doing for the people. And I'm here today as an advocate of positive change for our nation. I believe that there are universal biblical principles that can create an environment of dignity and respect that will enable the political parties in Washington to work more closely together for positive change and can avert another crisis like we had in 2008. And the goals of my campaign, if I'm elected as your senator, are to 1, eliminate the gridlock between the political parties in Washington. 2, return the power of government to the people. And 3, provide full employment for all eligible American citizens. Now, to eliminate the gridlock, I would promote the universal biblical principles to help us unify and talk with my colleagues around common goals in the support of the people that we are elected to serve, rather than the special interest groups, and to become more accountability in the federal government, have more accountability in the federal government, and to return the power of government to the people. I will push for specific accountability measures, which would include changing from a debt credit-based monetary system, which is stifling our government and our economy, to an asset-based monetary system, which will enable us to pay off our debt. And it's been done in the past, and it can be done again. Number 2, eliminating access of banks to free money, which is inflating our economy and is backed up by our taxes on the American people that we are paying to support their money that they are getting without spending any money of their own. And we would need to require them to compete in the economy the same as everybody else that competes. And number 3, transferring the Federal Reserve System to the Treasury Department for full oversight by the Congress.
You have 1 minute.
Establishing term limits for the members of Congress and the federal judges, and establishing a balanced budget for the federal government. Now, we take these measures will provide the foundation for American industries and the federal government to start strategically planning for solid and sustained growth for the economy. And this will not only create new jobs, but it will also create new industries and new opportunities for entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Sally Ayana, Justice of the Peace candidate for Tom Green County, right here in San Angelo, Texas.
Yes, we do.
And I want to also thank the Texas Coalition of Black Democrats, the Ministerial Alliance of San Angelo, and also the Democrats here in San Angelo, which is Tom Green County Democrats. Thank you all so much for this opportunity to push forward for this election. We need votes, votes, votes. So tell your friends everywhere, we need the votes. And I'm coming today, it's my first opportunity. Well, I've had several opportunities, but I wanted to let you all know, the new group that is here, that I'm an advocate for honesty, justice, peace, and I've lived that life, and I'm prepared for getting out there in the public for the Tom Green County citizens to be able to take care of the things that are most important to you as a citizen, to service you and be served at the same time. And also, some of the things that we would have to, what is very important to me, and my platform is justice for all. And I've put it in the form of an acronym. J for jurisdiction that the judge has to take care of, which is precinct 1. U is for unity. We need unity across the board. S is for service and servant. T is for trustworthy. I is for impartial to anyone. I don't want to be partial, but impartial. And C is for communications and committed. I'm very committed to, once I step up to the plate, I'm going to finish it up. And let's see, I think E is for ethics. We need plenty of that these days. F is for, fairness. O is for openness and being out of the box for everything. And for all, the R is for rescuing those who are in trouble. And A is for authority. L is for listening, and L is for the law, which I will uphold. So these are things that are very concerning to me and to you, and I will do my best to do my duty in upholding the Constitution of the United States. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Adrian Oseguera. I am a candidate for governor. So most of you I haven't met before. A little bit about myself. My undergraduate degree is in political economy with a minor in African American studies from Princeton University. I also have an MBA from SMU. Right after college, I went back to my hometown, which is El Paso, and I ran for office. I lost miserably, but I get to know a lot of people in that process in my hometown, which was great. So it was an avenue for me to get involved politically. I ended up working in economic development, which was helping to attract businesses to the area. And then I ended up working for a mayor of El Paso for 2 years as one of his policy advisors. We were the largest net gainer in our base realignment and closure process. That was our base Fort Bliss in 2005. In addition to that, we were the largest city to convert from a strong mayor form of government to a city manager form of government. After that tenure with the mayor, I decided to move to the Dallas area, which is where I reside now. And I went to pursue my MBA. I graduated #1 in my cohort, and I've been working in private equity since. Along the way, I've gotten married. I have 2 children, a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old. I'll tell people I'm 43 years old because some people look at me and they can't believe I'm 43 years old. So I'm 43 years old. My big push in this campaign is structural change. I know that a lot of candidates, we as Democrats, we always want to push what our progressive principles are, our democratic principles. Those principles are the same principles that I have. However, I want to look at a structural approach to how do you actually solve those. What we've done in our country for the last few decades is we seem to keep pushing each other on wedge issues this way and wedge issues the other way. But along that way, there's been a lot of stress on our economic, political, corporate structures, and long term, I believe we're going to have to address that structural change. So I'll give you one example. Our pension system, when we retire, 50% of Texans actually don't have access to retirement funds of any sort.
You have 1 minute.
I understand, thank you very much. So no pension systems, let alone 401ks, okay? So if you don't have retirement, then consumption in period 2 is going to be reduced, right, for those retirement years. In addition, we tell our kids, hey, go ahead, get an education, go get your college. They get indebted with tuition fees. At the same time, that the only way you could address not having pension systems is that we'd have to ask a certain population to work a little bit longer. If they work longer, then what happens to the labor force? And that population then pushes new entrants out a little bit longer. So all of these are larger structural changes. The new entrants don't have the opportunities to get employed, and in which case they don't have the opportunities to pay down debt. So there's a whole host of structural issues that we're going to have to address. And I believe that the party that addresses structural change doesn't just win this election, but wins multiple elections from here on out. Adrian Oseguera, TexasReason.com. Thank you.
Hello, San Angelo, can you hear me? Great. Hey, hold on, I want to take y'all back with me. Oh, I missed somebody. Get closer. Here we go. Awesome. That's a reminder of the reason why I'm doing this. And it's because of you and your children. Because, by the way, my name is Michael Cooper. I am a candidate for Lieutenant Governor, and the only thing I want to do is make sure that Dan Patrick is unemployed at the end of November. Everybody with me on that? Whether you choose me or my friend, because all of us become family up here, I'm going to help one way or the other, and you're going to either send me there the right way or I'm going there with a baseball bat. So you decide, you choose. I don't want to get arrested. Matter of fact, I listen to the news all the time, and we have a president in office right now, and he said there's nothing good that can come out of Africa. Well, guess what? My ancestors came from Africa, that great continent. They say you can't educate them. Well, guess what? I am a pastor. I am a politician. I am also a scientist, which is a psychologist. And you have to have a degree in psychology to deal with some of those folks across the aisle. That's all I'm saying. But I have fallen in love with St. Angelo. My daughter's right up the road in Waco. I have a daughter in California. I'm crossing across here all the time. I text some of you that I've become friends with. I say, hey, I'm stopping. I'm getting some water. Someone say, have you drank the water? I say, yes, I'm coming back. I'm stuck here. It's the cleanest city, best city ever. And it's the first place we had where we had food. But guess what? The reason why I'm here is to make sure that you understand that I am a viable candidate. I am ready to work. I am a leader. Get ready to start. Well, I'm starting my PhD in organizational leadership and education with emphasis in Christianity, because we have to remember that God is love. And it takes love to love everybody. I don't care if you're gay, straight, I don't care if you're black or white. Social injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. I want equal pay for women, and the main thing I want to work on is education for all of our kids. And we all can agree on that. Right. The education system in the state of Texas needs to get better sooner than later. My name is Michael Cooper. I want to be your Lieutenant Governor.
I'm Jenny Lou Leader. I'm a swim coach, so I project to the back. My name is Jenny Lou Leader, and I am running for United States Congress District 11, which is currently held by Michael Conway. I am a 7th generation Texan. My family moved to Llano when I was just a few months old, and I had my first birthday there. My mom still lives in the house that my parents raised all 4 of his kids. I graduated from Llano High. I was a Gold Star girl for 4-H. I proudly wear my pin. I went on to Southwest Texas in San Marcos, now Texas State, and I was a fighting Bobcat. I have an agriculture degree and a physical education minor. I went on to Ohio University, another fighting Bobcat, but now we're green instead of maroon and gold, and got my master's in athletic administration through the College of Business there. Think MBA plus about 12 hours of kinesiology, and that's what that degree rolls up to be. I'm running because we have not had a voice in the United States Capitol that represents District 11 since Mr. Conway has taken office. He votes for things that helps himself and his buddies that are multimillionaires, and not what helps the common people, the people like you and the people like me, like my mom in the back, retired teacher. Healthcare is an issue right now that's near and dear to our heart. If you've seen me previously since September, you know that I had surgery and I was in a cast for 5 months. I'm for single payer universal healthcare. There is no reason that anyone should ever have to choose between groceries and the doctor. There is no reason. We're in this great nation and we should all be able to have healthcare. We all should have a strong public education that we can send our children go on to higher education. It needs to be affordable. They should not be with crumbling and crippling debt when they graduate. My master's, halfway through, my company laid off all the southern part of the United States. I ended up taking out a loan. My payment is more than my car payments. I did not know until a few weeks ago that I could redo my payment to make it an affordable payment. Is that a slash like I'm out of time, or is that a 1 like I have 1 minute? 1 minute. Thank you. I'm sorry. I have my contacts in, so I can't see that far. So infrastructure will shovel-ready projects will bring jobs to our local communities. That's very important. We also need to be able to drive on roads and bridges that are not crumbling and collapsing. We need common sense gun laws, and that comes from a gun owner and a hunter. I do not want to see the teachers of my nieces and nephews packing guns when all they've had is a little 12-hour class on a Saturday. That is not smart. I believe that we can take energy, petroleum, solar, and wind and put it together and have our future. We don't need to depend on one area of that. I think that all 3 together is the future for our nation. I also believe that DACA does not have a path to citizenship right now, but they deserve a path to citizenship. Over 20,000 of those 800,000 DACA recipients are school teachers. I am Jenny, and she's waving at me, so I can talk forever. I'm Jenny Lou Leader. I'm running for Congressional District 11. I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Howdy y'all, my name is Tex Morgan. I'm running for Land Commissioner. I was born and raised in Houston, now I live in San Antonio. A lot of people have been sharing why they're running, and I can say why I'm running in one word, Harvey. When it hit, I called my family, called my friends, hey, are you okay, you okay, you okay? All of them were okay for the most part. One or two of them said, you know, I had to get out, my house is flooded, third time in 3 years. When I finally got off the phone talking to that friend, another friend called me out and he said, I've got a house in Bayside. Bayside, if y'all aren't familiar, it's literally right across from Rockport. You can see it. And he had had knee surgery a couple months prior. He said, you know, you're tall, you're young, you're strong. Can you come help me out with my house? I said, sure, absolutely. Went down, took the day off of work, helped him with his house. Then we went over his neighbors. What did I see? Texans helping Texans. But the tipping point wasn't just the beauty of seeing Texans helping Texans. It was volunteer firefighters from Fort Worth helping those Texans as well. And the Texas General Land Office was nowhere to be found. I said, this is wrong. I got to get off the bench and get into the game. By trade, I am a software engineer, which means I can provide you with practical and proactive solutions to all of the problems that we have right now in the land office. And it's not just natural disasters and recovery from that. It gets into so many other things. So many other things. And we need that practical mindset because for so long, people have been just passing the buck or giving Band-Aids to big problems. One of those big problems is, as others have said, is public education. Too much of the tax burden has been on you, the local taxpayer, not the state of Texas. I want to put in place a long-term plan so that our teachers, instead of being asked to do more with less or nothing at all, they have all the supplies they need. They get the raise they deserve. And it's also about our veterans. It's about getting our veterans into homes, keeping them in those homes through mortgages and loans that are below market rate. And it's letting our veterans know they're entitled, not just them, but their family as well, to 150 credit hours at our public universities. They deserve that. And I learned all about some of that our veterans because I was serving on the VIA MTA board in San Antonio. That's the mass transit board. And I was head of the accessible transit. And so many people, when they think about accessible transit, they think it's grandma, it's grandpa. No, they don't think about 25-year-old, 26-year-old coming back from the second, third tour that's newly disabled. We need to do more to change that, give a path forward for our veterans, welcome back into our communities. I'm going to close, thank you. When you vote for me, you're not just voting for me, you're voting for all y'all, because this is a team effort. So thank you so much. My name is Tex Morgan.
Hello everyone, my name is Mike Collier and I'm running for Texas Lieutenant Governor, and so I want to thanks to the Texas Coalition of Black Democrats for putting this together, and also the good folks of Tom Green County, and I'm delighted to be here in San Angelo. This is my second trip this campaign, and I ran for comptroller in 2014 and I think I made it to San Angelo twice, and I have a strong desire to come back again and again and again and again. I think the battle in 2018 is not in the big cities where the Democrats are doing very well, but it's in the mid-sized cities like San Angelo, and there are a lot of Democrats here. I know that for a fact, and so our job is to get them to the polls. By way of introduction, I've never held office. I ran for comptroller in 2014 because I was furious that the legislature would fire all those teachers, cut public education by $5.4 billion as they did, and tell us they had to because they had a deficit coming. You remember that? Well, there wasn't a deficit. I smelled a rat when I read that in the newspaper, and I was right. We did not have a deficit. We had a surplus. We had been deceived by our leaders, and 11,500 teachers lost their jobs, and you can't get those years back from those children, and that is absolutely no way to run a great state. So that got my attention, When the comptroller at the time stepped down, there weren't any Democrats who had the courage to run for that office. It takes too long, it's too hard to win. Nobody would bet their political career. Well, I don't have a political career, so I have nothing to lose, and we have everything to gain, and that's where we started. Now, I'm running in 2018 against El Diablo, Dan Patrick, the worst lieutenant governor in the history of the state, and on several things, and I hope we get into it today. First of all, public education is essential. I think we have a moral obligation to all of the children in our state, not just the sons and daughters of the well-to-do, to create a great education environment for them so that they can be successful in life. And where the Republicans are taking us is a system where the wealthy do great and the rest of us struggle. And that is not the American way, that is not a Texas value. I'm passionate about public education. We can't ask homeowners to pay any more money. We need more money for public education, but we can't ask homeowners to pay any more money because property taxes are too high. That's because the taxes on corporations have been cut again and again and again, leaving us to have to pay all the bills, and you can't ask us to pay any more. In fact, tell your Republican friends here in San Angelo that we really should be paying less in property taxes because we've got to hold the corporations to their part of the deal. When Democrats were running the operation a few decades ago, we did not have these difficulties. Property taxes were not out of control, and we had money to do things like roads and water infrastructure and tuition that was inexpensive. And last thing I want to say is I'm very concerned about health care. We should have expanded Medicaid. The fact that we didn't was a very, very bad deal, financial deal, and I'm very concerned about the direction of criminal justice. We have a lot to talk about in criminal justice, which will be a big part of my agenda. And since I haven't burned up, oh, I did burn it up, so I'll stop right there. Thank you very much. Mike Collier, running for Lieutenant Governor.
My name is Eric Walsgrove. I'm running for U.S. Congressional District 11. I am a school bus driver, mechanic. I am barely above the poverty line. Now that I am above the poverty line, I decided to run for Congress. Just got a little bit uppity. I got to do something. I'm tired of politicians telling me this is what the people want. They've never asked me. They've never asked my friends. So how is it they know what the people want if they've never asked us? I will use the members' representational allowance for what it's for, not for speech writers or PR agents. I want to use it to poll the district. I already have a district administrator lined up, and he will get volunteers. He will get part-time help, and we will go out and we will poll everyone. We will find out what the majority wants and make it happen. No more, this is what the people want, just off the top of my head because the lobbyist told me that, but actually what the people want. On top of that, I will hold them accountable. All those people, all those politicians that said, I want term limits, and yet have not posted a term limit bill since 1993, get them out. Or at least put their names down so that when I put out my term limit bill, everybody can ask them, why did a bus driver from Odessa, Texas get this bill out there? And you couldn't when you've been in politics for 15, 20 years. I'm just tired of career politicians lining their pockets on our taxpayer money. We need to get them out of there. We need to get average Americans, average blue-collar Americans in office. We need new blood, new ideas. We need new people in office. My name is Eric Walsgrove. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Can you all still hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna pass the mic down and got my questions kind of positioned based on how you all are seated this evening. So we're gonna start with the first question to Mr. Kimbrough. And because this is the Texas Coalition of Black Democrats, we are also using some of the questions that were sent out on the straw poll survey to many of you. Some of you responded with it, and so we want to give the community here in San Angelo an opportunity to hear your responses, and some of them have been edited just a little. But here's the first question. Over the past 40 years, African Americans have supported Democratic candidates with approximately 88% of our votes. How will electing, or in this case, electing you, benefit African Americans in Texas?
I feel, first of all, that the key to us all having benefits, including African Americans, is that we move our political system back to where it's representing the people and jobs. And if we are able to create the jobs for our economy, then we're all going to do well. And the reason we're not doing that is that 80 to 90% of us are really being controlled by a very small group because of the benefits they're getting in our monetary system. They're getting free money, and we as taxpayers are paying for that. And once we free that up, then we can begin to initiate projects from the federal government as well as from industries that will create jobs. You won't have the ceilings that we have now due to debt. Because if the banks are paying interest on that money rather than we're paying money, paying for their, to support their payments, then we'll have some income in addition to the taxes that we have. So we can start planning and then creating new jobs for everyone, blacks as well as the rest of us in the economy, because it's not just blacks that are suffering. It's the 90% of us that are scraping to make it from day to day when the big shots are actually controlling the economy. So my proposal is to create jobs for us all, with the blacks, of course, being included in that, in the sense that we need to be able to, at a very young age, be able to start teaching our children, as I was taught, jobs and ways of earning money as you grow up, and not have to go, as many are going to college and going out of college for their first job opportunities. We should be having job opportunities for young people as well as they're growing up, so they learn our free enterprise system, and they learn how to earn for themselves before they go to college. And then when they come out of college, we can start creating jobs as they were created when I was growing up. I was able to go to jobs because industry and government were supporting our schools. They're not supporting our schools anymore because they moved the jobs out of the country. And we need to bring those jobs back and create new jobs in our economy, and that's what I want to shine the light on the problem. And I think by shining the light on the problem, it cannot exist as it is, because it's actually not fair to the rest of the economy and the rest of Americans.
All right, the next question is for Ms. Sally Ayana. Ms. Ayana, there has been a lot of controversy regarding same-sex marriage in this country since the law was passed which recognizes marriage between people of the same sex. As a justice of the peace, how will you handle marriages between people of the same sex?
I know that is a problem that is faced by all voices, which really is two, either you are or not. But for me, I will uphold the law as a justice of the peace, because I will be facing marrying people. And at this point in time, no matter what my belief is or choice, I will go by what the law is. And as far as we wanting to get families together, and sometimes it split families up when even a parent finds out that their child is gay or lesbian, and you don't know that sometimes in our own families there are these gays and lesbians. So I, as a representative for the community, would uphold the law. It says in the Constitution that the justice of the peace is able to marry whomever wants to be married. And when the couple would come to me, I would do that. I would marry them.
All right. Education is the key to help individuals lift themselves from poverty into prosperity. However, African American students exceed the national average in Texas, with 60% living in poverty. What will you do to help strengthen our public education system here in Texas?
Great question. So for those that don't understand how our education system is largely funded, there's a formula, and that formula is not necessarily connected to actual costs, okay? So it's kind of like, the way I equate it is it's like one recipe fits all. So even though you're going to take a recipe and you're going to apply it, it's supposed to apply universally. And that's just not how it works. Every community has different characteristics that need to be applied. So take it for this example. If you had a recipe and it was your mother's chocolate chip cake recipe, right? You would think that this recipe applies to everyone. But if you go to another person's house and you say, well, this person likes nuts, does the recipe allow you the flexibility to add nuts to the recipe, or does it not, based on that community? As of right now, this formula, the way we calculate it, doesn't actually address, to the extent that it should, different socioeconomic statuses of the population base, nor does it address, even to my liking, differences in cost of living from one area to another. So my plan is to first look at that formula to make sure we're actually applying the formula to different areas and tying it to actual cost and to actual need that is based. So let me give you an example. I use a production model a lot. If we were building cars, okay? If we were building cars, we'd have uniform inputs coming in to make a uniform output. Education is not that way. So you can't have a base formula like that. You're taking very diverse inputs. People with different parents, with different socioeconomic backgrounds, parents with different educational levels. You're taking kids with different access to resources, computers, all of this, and you're trying to take a diverse set of inputs and make a universal output, which is a educated, contributing member of society. So what we need to do is figure out that we have a formula that is one flexible. Once we do that and we evaluate how it would be implemented from one community to another, then we have to go back and address the cost. Where are we going to get the appropriate funding to address this cost? And so when you look at the first formula, what it can mean is, do we need bilingual people to assess? Do we need more people to assess dyslexia, special needs of certain populations? What are the resources that we actually need to make the educational formula more effective? Then you go back to cost, and when we go to cost, as Mike Collier and others have mentioned, you got to go to what our taxation systems currently provide and whether or not we're going to have to do structural change to change those taxation systems in order to make sure that we can adequately fund the new formula, which is actually tied to cost based on diverse populations and their diverse needs. Education, extremely complex, great question. A whole lot more to say, and I have videos on my site that also get into it a little bit more. Thanks.
Okay, this is for Lieutenant Governor position. We're gonna kind of change the question up here just a little bit. Criminal justice reform is a high priority in our community. The negative impact of laws currently on the book affect our communities of color and all people who live in poverty. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing repairing the criminal justice system? And please provide your stance on bail reform, on bail reform sentencing on nonviolent drug offenses.
Awesome question. It's amazing. This is personal to me, and I stand because the room is flat. And my name is Michael Cooper, for those of you that came in late. I am your candidate for Lieutenant Governor. You know, right now, it all goes back to education too, because the school to prison pipeline is just blowing up. African American are the minority, but we're the largest that's incarcerated. In the state of Texas, we have 146,000 people that's incarcerated. Over half of those are minorities or people of color. Now they include Hispanic. So we have to be careful. That's the reason why I fight for everybody. When they start picking on my Hispanic brothers, that's just what they used to do to us in the 60s with Jim Crow laws. So we have to make sure that we come to the defense and the aid of everyone. So we can't throw anyone away. So we practice with, at home. My mother used to tell me, practice what you preach. I had a son at 16 years of age. He got caught up in some of those laws. Less than 3 ounces of marijuana on him. Somebody say, well, what are you going to do about marijuana in the state of Texas? Whatever they're doing in California, sooner or later it's going to happen in Texas. Well, guess what I want to do with that tax dollar? I want to make sure we put every dime on education to make sure we don't have those kids incarcerated. Because let me tell you what's happening. You go to an AA meeting and you have some folks in there that don't look like me. They have been arrested 9 times for DWIs. It's supposed to be 3 strikes, you're out. Let my son get caught 3 times and don't pay his bill, and he's going to end up incarcerated over a 3-ounce pull-over of marijuana and do 5 to 10 years, and we won't see him, and a soul is lost and a life is lost. So I know a thing or two about a thing or two, especially when it comes to our African-American males. So we need to make sure that we educate them, have a vocation for them. Everybody's not cut off to go to college. We right now, if you wreck your car, you send to the body shop, you got a 2 or 3 month wait. Why can't we teach these kids how to do that type of labor in high school and not worry about a minimum wage? That's a maximum wage. Do you not know that a body shop worker makes about $70,000 to $80,000 a year, which is more than a school teacher have about 60 seconds? So what we need to do is educate our kids and give them hope, because right now they do not have it.
Ready for the next question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'll make sure I have my notes together. Please explain your belief about the importance of diversity in Texas and in our nation. What portion of your senior campaign, for instance, is African American? And if elected, what percentage would you plan to staff in your position?
Okay, so right now I only have 1 paid staffer who is a lesbian, and we all love her to death. Everybody on my campaign is volunteers. And to answer your question, the diversity is a concern of mine. When I was teaching in Title I schools where I was the only Anglo in the class. And everybody has something to offer, and I think that that's what people need to look over. We need to look over the color of skin and look at what you have to offer and what you bring to the table. And when you bring that to the table, I think that then we get over the skin color, because there's so many of people that when I was teaching, they were like, well, how long are you going to be here? Because you're the only Anglo in the class. I'm like, what? I didn't realize that. Because I look at everybody as a person, not as a race or girl or boy. Now, to answer your question, the diversity in Texas and the nation, I look at it 2 different ways. I look at it as male-female in office, and then I look at it as race in office. And let's be honest here, women and women of color, we are on the totem pole at the bottom. We are holding everybody up, because there's more men of all different races than us in all of the offices that are elected. So we need to increase the number of women. We need to increase the number of African American women. We need to increase the number of Anglo women and of Hispanic women, of all of us. And I mean, I was not raised where we had any type of discrimination. I didn't experience it until my first year of coaching, when I had a child come in and tell me that NCAA lawyer was going to NCAA, I get them all backwards, I'm sorry. Anyway, his mom had hired a lawyer to sue me because I was failing him because he hadn't dressed out in PE. And he was going to sue me because I was white. And I'm like, what does that make a difference? Because I wasn't raised that way. We were raised that every single person is a child of God, and we all should be treated accordingly. And you should never be treated because you're a boy or a girl differently, or a race. You should just treat everybody equally.
All right. According to your stance on your statements on your site, you disagree with the standards set by current Land Commissioner George P. Bush. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
What are 2 concerns you have about the lack of transparency in the Land Commissioner's office today? And if elected, how will you begin to create a greater sense of transparency?
Well, first of all, I believe that honesty is the best policy. instilled by me by my mother, and she can tell you a great story about this later on. But really solidified my time with Boy Scouts and working towards Eagle. The first thing, open up the books on the Alamo. If you're going to spend $100 million, you should know where every single dang penny is spent. The second thing, we need external audits verifying what is going on. If you don't have an external audit, things fall through the cracks and they never get addressed. Both of those things I adhere to every single year I was on the Mass Transit Board. And things came up that, you don't always want to hear, but once you have an external auditor say, hey, maybe you need to change this, you go, oh, we didn't see that. Thank you for helping us. And then you go address it. So those two things off the top of my head. But there's so much more. You need greater transparency when it comes to what are the qualifications for different programs. How is money being spent in recovery efforts? What are the paths to get into those programs, and how do you apply it, instead of some of the stories I'm hearing where people are finding out they're getting denied because the land commissioner doesn't believe them, thinks it's a fraud. That's wrong. You need to educate people and help them understand how that works. If you try to hide something away, it's that old saying, a mission of truth is the same thing as a lie. We need to be honest up front, put everything out there, and in a way that's easy for people to access, and done in a regular way.
Okay, Mike. In some African American communities across the state, we lack healthy eating options. We lack grocery stores with fresh fruits and vegetables, and students who cannot afford to pay for lunch at school are shamed in front of their peers. What actions would you take to help spur business investment to get grocery stores within our communities to fill this void? And how do we ensure our students in school get a healthy meal without being traumatized because they lack the funds because they are living below the poverty line?
Wonderful question, and I'll take it in reverse order, if that's all right. Let's talk about schools first. I often say that we should put more money into schools and that money should go in the classroom. But by that I mean teacher pay and class size and use of specialists and food. And I think spending money on nutrition is probably the best money we could possibly spend in the state, because hungry kids can't learn, and so nutrition is part of it. And I think we should go back to the way we used to do it in the old days, where everybody gets a free meal. I think everybody ought to have a free lunch, free breakfast, free dinner. That's the best money we could possibly spend. And if it's free to all, then the stigma goes away. And I don't see why we don't do that. And because we're a very prosperous state, that's the best money that we could possibly spend. So I would be a strong advocate in the schools for free meals for everybody, and take the stigma completely out of it. And as I recall, that's the way it was when I was growing up. I think that's the way it was in the state of Texas when I was growing up. And we all ate in the cafeteria. And sometimes the food was good, sometimes the food wasn't so good. Now, in terms of food deserts, that's a very, very important question. It's a very important issue. And anybody, if you're a Democrat and you campaign and you're out in the community, you can see that we have food deserts, and it's a real problem. And marry that with transportation difficulties, you can't provide food for your family. And so the question is, how do we entice corporations, grocery stores and so forth, to invest in our communities to do this without public support? So then it becomes a governing sort of philosophical question. Should the government be supporting it with financial support for these companies? And the answer is yes. A Democrat would say the answer is yes, because it's the kind of thing where we have to make decisions as a community. What do we want to achieve in terms of the quality and the health and the well-being of our community? And so much stems from whether or not our communities are healthy, and whether or not they feel like they have the support and the encouragement. That's the kind of thing that government should do. That's the kind of thing that I will support as a Democrat lieutenant governor. It's also the kind of thing that Republicans will not go anywhere near, because they have the wrong concept as to the role of government and the health and well-being of our communities, which I think is what this entire election cycle is all about. I wish I had more time, but I'm very, very passionate about that. That's where we have to drive change, and we're on the very cusp of doing it, by the way.
I'm sorry, I was so engrossed in listening to that, I didn't get my next question ready. So, you have indicated that you, and I liked your joke at the beginning about you getting uppity and you're now above poverty, so you decided to run for public office. But what do you think is needed in order for regular citizens to have an interest and the ability to run for public office?
They need their representatives to actually pay attention to them. Right now, like I said before, the representatives say this is what the people want, but they have not actually gone out to talk to us. When you're not heard, you stop talking. And that is what has happened. People are not being heard. They're being told somebody will be their voice, which just means they're taking their voice away from them. They want their own voice to be heard. They want someone to come out and say, what do you want? Actually listen and try to make it happen. And when you do that, when you show that you are listening, they come back. And they're like, oh, he listened. I have more to say. You want people to get involved. You actually have to talk to them, you have to listen, and you have to show them that you were listening. That's pretty much it. There's nothing better than just having open ears. And that's what the polling is for. I know that at first I'm only going to get maybe 40%. Most people are going to be like, I'm not answering these questions. But then when they see that everybody else answered, when they get the mailer that says this is what the majority wants, and they're like, well, I want something else, they'll answer next year. And then they'll answer more the year after. And pretty soon you got 100%, everybody coming out and saying, this is what I think. They're actually listening, I'm going to talk. That's it.
All right, here's the next question for you, Mr. Kimbrough. African American entrepreneurs have long struggled to secure capital to start businesses in our community. What economic development initiatives will you champion that will have a direct and positive impact on African American businesses, employment, and entrepreneurship?
I think the key, as I've been mentioning before, is to make sure that we have a fair system. And as it is right now, it is not fair because it's geared toward just certain bankers having control of everything. And when we get it to the point where the people have more control than we, through government and through private industry, can be able to have black banks so that we can do our, as we have done in the past. We've had tremendous businesses in the past in many, many cities in this country. And all we need to do now is get capital available for us to invest in our own communities. And that would be the key in what I'm talking about, in getting us to where we're working toward and voting toward getting the fairness in the banking system. That's the starting point, because right now that's the free money that's there. That should be a place where anybody can go based on criteria. Just like when we go to get a loan, we have to have certain criteria. The banks now don't. But if you set it up to where the access is through money that's made available based on criteria of people coming for loans, then anybody can come and get loans. It's not set up just for the people that have the power and have already been set up to control things. Then we can, through government, be able to have in our communities black entrepreneurs, where we support our own communities, where we can do our own investment in our own communities, and the money will be available. And that's the key that I'm looking at at getting control of government and putting, making it known what is happening now that's taking money away from our communities. And it's very explicit, but because of the chaos in our economy, nobody is looking. And things are kind of apathetic. And I believe that we shine the light on these things that are going on, we can make money available so that we all could share in our economy. And then once we start planning ahead, then when you start doing infrastructure and things like that, then you have to put out bids where we as African Americans can bid on, because we will have the same criteria as everyone else. And things won't be set up just for the people who have the power to control who gets what. And that's what's going on right now. And that's what my whole campaign is set to make things fair for everyone and access available to all types of people, all kinds of people, and from all walks of life. And I'm basing that on principles, basic principles of treat other people like you want to be treated, treat the life of every individual as sacred, so that when we do that, we take care of everybody.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Young, as Justice of the Peace, eviction of property is a major disruptor to individuals and families. Each situation is unique. Will you consider each case to make a decision about evictions, or will you follow the letter of the law no matter what the circumstances are?
I would go by the law, of course, but also I would go
Can you
I would go per case, because every case is not the same, and I would deal with it as I go with one-on-one with that person that may be having a problem with their eviction. Now, the landlords and the tenants, they have different issues. They're on different sides, of course, and I would like to be able to let them be on one accord with each other. And then there's a problem when there is an eviction with the tenant, so I would deal with that tenant and find out what is your problem, how can we help you to do better in the future if you are evicted this time. And then for the tenant side, the landlord side, say how can we help you with your tenant in the future to do a better job. And maybe a lot of times the landlord is not always doing what needs to be done to keep that tenant doing what they need to do. Now, of course, it's going to be paid. So if that's a tenant that has many children, there's a problem there that they can't keep up with their pay. But I would like to be able to help find out why they can't pay, find out some agencies that can help them, and then help the landlord know that when you're fixing your properties, that you find out about these tenants before you put them in there. Because, and now the reason I say it is because I've been on both sides, and I'm a mother of 5, and I know it's a struggle. So I know that there's problems that you can't come up with your money all the time when you have to pay. So that is why I would definitely make sure that I would do something for both sides of it, and it'll be one-on-one basis with each one.
Next question. Gentrification is a major issue affecting residents throughout Texas. You indicated one of your degrees is in African American Studies, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
What will you do to support preserving African American culture and history across Texas, particularly in neighborhoods where gentrification is occurring, revitalizing neighborhoods, but pushing our people out?
Right. So this issue has kind of come up, and it's a bit controversial, but I'm willing to address it. And that is introducing, as a replacement to property taxation, income tax. And I think it has to be looked at. And I don't think it has to be looked at simply from the vantage point of the African American population, although it is one of the populations that it would affect. Now, why? I believe that all taxation is income tax, okay? How you assess it. So if this is your property, right? I assess your taxation on this property. But how you actually pay your property tax is through your income, right? What you get on your job and how you decide through whether you're paying it through your escrow or you actually go in on January 31st to go pay your property taxes. You're cutting a check out of your income, right? Whether you're on a fixed income or something else. So my point is that people can put the cost of this based on market forces, right? Things that are outside of your control. So if you're on a fixed income or you decide that, or maybe you lose your job, your income can fluctuate while the value of this property exponentially just keeps going up year after year due to forces that are outside of your control. But our state was going to scare you out of saying income tax because, again, we have this fear of April 15th coming around, the burden of trying to file your income taxes is fine, but what's happening in Austin, not simply just with the African American population, but with regular folks, is that the value of their property is escalating so high, they no longer have the income to pay for it, for their income taxes. Then we're dealing with a whole other population of the elderly. And the elderly are on fixed income as well. So now you have to look at these structural issues. In addition, beyond all of that, then you still have to look back at other things that, this is what Michael Cooper talked about and other things, where it comes back to education. Where does it come back to social safety net programs, right? In other words, if the African American and Hispanic populations don't have access to the same level of education, then they're not prepared to go to college. If they're not prepared to go to college, then they're already set behind on getting the avenue to have the revenue in which to maintain their neighborhood, right? To take over their parents' payments if they want, or to buy a house in that significant area. So all of this is it's comprehensive. I will say that Coalition of Black Democrats puts out extremely very, very good questions. The issue, though, is that they're so comprehensive that you can't actually touch them just from one policy standpoint. They are very much interconnected to a whole other things, and it'll come down to economy, systems, which is why a big push of mine. And by the way, if you want to talk about one of my biggest educated teachers, Cornel West. Cornel West out of Princeton University. He talks about this stuff all the time, and if you want to talk about structural change, a lot of it is due to this comprehensive analysis of a whole lot of issues. People like this have been talking about this for quite some time.
One moment. All right. Mr. Cooper. Criminal justice reform is a high priority for our community. The negative impact of laws currently on the book affect all communities of color and all people who live in poverty. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing repairing the criminal justice system? And please provide your, did I ask you this already? I think so.
Yeah, it was early, yeah.
Okay.
I can
No.
ask, okay, go.
No, I'll give you another question.
I can guess that.
Okay. All right, let me give you another one.
All right.
Just a second. I'm so sorry.
That's fine. Yeah, continuation on this, because there's something that's happening in Texas, man, that nobody's talking about.
All right, here we go. Quality affordable health care, which includes mental health care, is a vital need for the African American community. Too many in our community have died from lack of treatment for treatable illnesses because they lack the means to seek treatment. Do you believe health care is a right that all Americans should have access to? And how do we repair our defective health care system?
Did I write that for you? Healthcare, we all deserve it. We deserve it. We deserve it. And it's a right, and we should have it. 27.8 million people in the state of Texas, and we haven't come up with a way to do healthcare. Everybody want to repeal and replace Obamacare. It's hard to do it because no one ever thought about even doing it before. So why we want to repeal and replace? Probably there are some fixes that need to happen. That's what we need to look at. I've already started working on this question, matter of fact. I already have an economist in Fort Worth, Texas, Sahid. He's Muslim. He has 3 degrees in economics, masters, by the way. My own personal doctor, which happened to be Republican, is voting for me. She's on that committee. I have 3 nurses that's on that committee. Yeah, I've already reached across the aisle. So I'm already working on it. Matter of fact, in Harris County, in Missouri City, the area you're in, my sister would not leave from that area because of the fact that she has a little thing called a gold card. Google it on the way home, not while you're driving. And this gold card allows her, I mean, she's poverty-stricken, had stroke. If she had better health care when she was a single mom, raising 4 kids and adopting 4 other girls, a single, I didn't know that was possible, that you can even adopt with that type of income, or lack thereof. And she's had stroke, she's had high blood pressure, diabetes, and a heart attack. And she wants to move back to Beaumont, but because of her health care issue, she cannot. We have figured out a way, and we're figuring out a way to have health care. And y'all, that's what I'm doing on the side, because my main thing is education. I can multitask because I come from the automotive industry where you had to do 1,000 things at one time and be the best at it. I was with one company for 30 years. Google me, you'll find out. They retired me at the age of 50, gave me a Rolex watch, told me to go and run for lieutenant governor. No, I'm kidding. They told me to go back and use all of the skills that were given. I got about 50 seconds. All the skills that were given to me to go and make a difference. And y'all, let me tell you something. I've already figured out health care. And if we had the health care back in 1986, July 4th, my father was an entrepreneur like myself, but he could not make enough money to pay for his health care, because when you're self-employed, sometimes everybody else get paid and you get nothing. That's right. Has anybody ever been there? I'm going to leave that alone.
Pick up the mic, Ms. Jenny.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. In one of the earlier questions, you talked about the need for common sense gun laws, and in light of the situation that has recently occurred in Florida, and then we just had a young man the other night who killed his parents, allegedly.
Yes.
That appears to have some type of mental health issues. Now, mental health is on one end of the spectrum, and on the other end of the spectrum is just regular citizens who don't have apparent mental health issues. So what is your approach, and what exactly do you mean by common sense gun laws?
It's a very complicated question on both ends. So common sense gun laws, the easy answer would be to reinstate Bill Clinton's assault rifle ban that George Bush let expire. Now, the hard part to that question is, how do we judge mental capacity when you go into Academy, not Dick's Sporting Goods store anymore, but your local hardware store that sells long guns, which if you're not 21, you can buy a long gun. Well, a long gun is a rifle. It's like what I hunt with. I'm a hunter, I own guns. But I believe that we need to be common sense gun laws, which means that not only should you have to take a handgun class to go get your concealed carry, but I think you need to have taken the class before you can purchase any type of a weapon. And I'm talking even a shotgun, that you need to have taken some type of gun owner safety class. Now, on the middle part, what we have to look at, what happened in Sutherland Springs, is a breakdown of our armed forces registry getting to our police registry, to getting to, if that would have been shared, then he could have never purchased a gun. I think that we need to really look carefully, because if we have Air Force, Army, Navy, if we have veterans that come back and they have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm sorry, I'm never good with acronyms. And my hat's off to you for doing that a while ago. I was sitting here thinking there's no way I could have done that. But we have to be very careful, because when they're treated, my nephew came back with it and he's gone through his treatment and he's fine now. So we can't say because you were trained with that, you were diagnosed with that, 10 years later you can't purchase a gun. So we have to be very careful with assigning a mental label to people, because at times they can go through some type of training and some type of assistance and be well on the other end. And when that happens, I hesitate to take their right away for life to bear arms and to protect themselves. I do want to go a little farther on this. I taught for 11 years. My family are teachers, administrators, and coaches. I talked with over 100 people who said arming educators is not the answer at all. So to try to put it all together, I think that we need to strengthen our gun laws. We need to make 21 the age to purchase all firearms. I think before you can purchase a firearm, you need to go through some type of safety training class so you understand what you're purchasing and the grave danger that you are putting yourself in. My dad always said, don't bring a knife to a gunfight, but don't bring a gun to a knife fight either.
We're going to go back to some basic questions for the, am I still on? Can you all hear me?
No,
You all can't hear me anymore?
no.
Not too good. Okay.
Do you need the mic?
No, I think I'll get the question out. Let's go back to the General Land Office, outreach communications. You're very concerned about what happens to veterans
Yes, ma'am.
and how that particular office treats veterans.
Yes.
The incumbent who is there now brags, you said about a good website, but you said the website doesn't translate into good home site for our veterans. So my question is, how do you plan to outreach to the veterans, taking in consideration that many of them are homeless and do not have permanent residence? How do you plan to connect with your homeless veterans?
It's really simple. You give them homes. When I announced that I was running for office, I had 2 ex-Marines come. They showed up 15 minutes late. And they showed up 15 minutes late because they were attending a funeral of a fellow soldier that passed away on the streets. And they have an organization in San Antonio just to address that. And he apologized, and I said, no, there's no need for you to apologize. Because truthfully, that organization should never need to exist. We have public lands. There's nothing to say that we couldn't provide short-term housing to help our veterans get on their feet and stay on their feet with that public land. There's nothing to stop us from doing that except for us to take that initiative. And I believe that it's something that needs to happen, because the fact that even one veteran passes away on our streets homeless it's a tragedy, and it's a shame, and it's wrong.
All right, can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Changes?
Yes.
Change something back?
Yes.
You didn't know I did that, did you? Okay. All right. Let's see here. Going back to some of the comments that you all made earlier. You talked about free meals when you were growing up, best that you could recall. And so my question to you is, how do you propose paying for that if all students are to get free meals? And would that be to all students or only students like we have today within a certain economic base? How would you propose to pay for that?
All students.
Okay.
I like to keep things simple, and I think all students, because I think that's the best money that we can spend. How does an accountant address a question like that in 2 minutes, 1 minute or less? I think the biggest reason why I'm involved, the part assigned to me, is to find the money. Because we need more money for public education. And we can talk all day long about the need to put more money into teacher retirement, healthcare, teacher compensation, class size, specialists. It goes on and on and on. The question is, where are we going to get the money? Now, I found the money in 2014. Here's where I'm going to try not to be too accountant-like. but I found the money when I ran for comptroller in 2014. The owners of the large commercial and industrial properties in the state, so these are the oil companies that own refineries, and Saudi Arabians that own downtown skyscrapers, and Formula One racetrack outside of Austin, Texas, and the Marriott in San Antonio. It goes on and on and on. Because of a defect in the law, they are able to hire lawyers and sue and not pay their taxes. They are underpaying their taxes because their appraisals are below market. And the amount of money involved is extraordinary. There was a time that the law was passed in 1997, called the Equal and Uniform Law. It was immediately discovered to be defective. Property values, because the lawsuits started to go down, the revenues started to go down, and even Rick Perry at the time in 2006 saw that this was a crisis and organized a special committee to study it. Legislation was proposed. Every time legislation comes before the legislature, nothing happens because the people that are enjoying this tax break write big checks to politicians. They don't write checks to me, nor will they, but they write checks to the others. So the first order of business is to close those loopholes and recover that money. And you know how much money is missing? The large appraisal districts in the state estimated in 2006 that $4 billion a year was missing from the owners of large commercial industrial properties who are cheating us. And for every dollar that they don't pay is either an extra dollar that we pay or it's $1 less that's available for food in the schools. Imagine what you could do with $5 billion in terms of improving public education and meals for children and student and teacher pay and rest. So one of the powers available to the Lieutenant Governor is bring things to a vote. You can require senators to vote. This loophole's been open, that money's been missing, and they have never voted on whether we should or should not close it, because that's the coward's way out. I hate to be so rough about it. But as Lieutenant Governor, we'll bring that to a vote. Somebody in the Senate, at my direction, will craft the legislation to close that loophole, and they'll vote. And let's just see whether or not they'll actually go back to their districts. Republicans, Democrats will vote for it. But will Republicans go back to their districts and face their constituents and say, I voted no on a bill that was going to close those loopholes and bring that money in? That's how we'll do it.
All right, as someone who is new to politics and someone who has a very different approach to doing things in the state of Texas than most politicians who have run campaigns previously, what will you do to reach across the aisles, even within your own party, to bring a fresh perspective and point of view that represents the average citizen?
It goes back to listening. You talk to the people across the aisle, you talk to people on both sides, and you find that one thing that you both can agree on. There is always something you can agree on. And then you work from there. You let them know what you've heard, what you've found, different people you've talked to, get them in touch with other people that you've talked to. But the key ingredient is common ground. You find that common ground, you work from there, you get them seeing that you're listening to them, and they will listen to you, and eventually you can come to an agreement. Doesn't matter really what it's on. Now, okay, there's some people who will not listen. There are some people who will not talk to you no matter what. It happens. But usually you can find that common ground. A lot of the people in my shop are Republican and a Libertarian, a couple of completely non-political. But I get to talking to them, and they'll tell me what they want. And they don't realize that's politics. What the people want and finding a way to make it happen. That's the basis of all politics. It's not a degree, it's not money, it's not even the power, it's the people. Talking to them, listening to them, and getting them what they want, what they need. And we need that back in politics. We we need people willing to listen. Thank you.
All right, we're down to the last question, and these questions will come from the audience. And in your remarks, please ensure to give your closing statement regarding your campaign. You have 4 minutes to answer the question from the audience, because the question may not be totally prepared, but to also give your closing statements. And I will turn to the audience. Does anyone have a question for any of the candidates?
My question is one that I think everyone can relate to, and how do you stand on raising the minimum wage? Because if you don't make a minimum wage to support your family, the things you're talking about will never happen. That will.
Anyone who wants to answer, he said.
I'll start out with that. I believe that we do need a minimum wage for us all, between the owners and the people working for the owners. I think that you need to have a minimum wage for established businesses. And I think there's another way that you can look at it when management and labor can work together, and that is that labor share in the profits. You know, normally you have an owner that wants to control everything. In other words, he wants to control the bottom line and say, this is it, I'm going to pay you as little as I can so I can make as much as I can. But if you set up a system where management and labor are working together during the good times, they are sharing responsibility. In other words, you get a portion of the profits along with management, because you, the person that's doing the work to make the company profitable, is just as important as the manager, because they can't survive without you putting out a good product, without you coming to work. All of those things contribute to the bottom line. So my feeling is that we can get both of them work minimum wage first to establish a base, but beyond that, you share in the profit so that when the company is doing well, everybody does well. But when you have hard times, then you work together to figure out how to minimize the problems to keep the business going, because if the business goes, everything goes. You have no income. So my feeling is that we should work together, although this is, you know, they're on left, right field right now. But if the two could work together, I think a combination of profit sharing and having a minimum to have to survive, and then you would be making money just like the owners would be making when profits are good. You would not only be making just that regular salary, but you'd be making that plus. You know, so that makes it where everybody is benefiting when the economy is good, and they're working together when the economy is not so good to keep money in everybody's pocket.
Your closing statement, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, for the past several years, I've been writing a book based on a scientific analysis of the Bible. And I came up and I was looking for some universal biblical principles that could be applied to like every aspect of life. They're there. And I discovered 10 principles that will promote peace, prosperity, and survival for all who follow them, no matter their race, gender, nationality, sexual orientation, religious beliefs, economic status, or political affiliation. And I used those along with the research data from the book to develop some proposals that I have on my website. And I have the biblical principles also there, where if we can just start coming to a common point of view where we can start talking, as many people have said here, where we can have a common denominator to talk from, like treating each other with respect and treating every life as important, as sacred, then that takes care of a lot of things that the fights that we have. If we can just start respecting one another. And then that, and after running for this office, I feel that we can start addressing the problems of our nation. And instead of continually complaining, we can start working together to actually accomplish something. And that's my proposal here, is to try to do something positive in our society, to start us on a positive trend toward getting us working together.
And your time is
So
up.
this is your support for positive change in Washington and in our country. So this is your support for Edward Kimbrough, United States Senate. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else, do any of the other candidates want to respond to that question and then
Yes.
make your closing
I will.
statement? All right, Ms. Ayana?
Is it on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm retired from telecommunications, Verizon, here in San Angelo for 40 years with the company. And I was in the union at least 25 of those years, and I think we need the union back because the union, as he's already said, works with the management. And with the management, everyone works out the problem. And I know when I first started, I was still in high school. And the job that I had, the class I had to have a job with them. And so that's how I was blessed to get this job for that long, and God blessed me to raise kids with it. So, but the problem is that, well, the thing is that whenever we had the union, we were able to talk with the management and able to make sure that the issues that were there, we were able to talk about those issues and get them resolved, or if not, we voted. We had a chance to vote. So I thought that was a good thing, and that's what helped me raise my kids, because we had minimum wage, and then we had to build up over time because everything we got was because of the union. We got vacations and other days pay. Later on, we got time off for hospital or whatever. But now those things are going away. And that's why I would promote that. Even in management, we had people in management that still, even they said if we were able to create a union, they would too. So I am in favor of union and raising the minimum wage from what it is now to $15. And he was saying how they found money. Well, then find that money so that it can be done. Now, my position as running for Justice of the Peace Precinct 1, I would also be dealing with warrants, small claims court items, and with truancies, and all of this has to do with family. I'm concerned about family. Like I said, I have 5 children, and that's what, each one of them, as I said to one lady, is that each one of them are different, and I have to treat them that way. That's why every issue is needed to be taken one at a time, one-on-one issue. So my justice for all is across the board. Everybody needs to have justice for all and have the peace that they need to get their democratic answers done as we should have it. So please vote for me, those who are here in San Angelo, for Justice of the Peace Precinct 1, Tom Green County. Thank you.
Do any of the other candidates want to respond to that, or are we ready for another question?
I address minimum wage.
And please include your closing statement.
Great. Reason why you have to have minimum wage because you don't have people that are certified in a certain field. Unskilled laborers. Now, I'm going to deal with that in a second. But our people perish for lack of knowledge. That's the reason why I decided to run as Lieutenant Governor, to change the education system, make sure that we bring vocation back into high schools. So we now have electricians that's graduating. So we can also have mechanics again. Years ago, my father taught me to change a spare, and I can drop a block in a GMC truck. I can put a lifter on a flatbed truck. But kids are not doing it now because their fathers are incarcerated. So these are the issues that we have. So we have to educate our kids and get away from the minimum wage. I'm talking about a maximum wage. When you have a certification in education and knowledge, that gets rid of minimum wage. But we can still deal with minimum wage. And we have to come back and deal with minimum wage. I paid a minimum wage of $12 an hour in 1985 and 86. People are gonna pay what people are worth, or you're gonna lose a good worker. Bucky's paying $13 an hour. So y'all, guess what? Minimum wage is more than $7 an hour.
Yeah.
It is. People, you can't get a good worker for $11, $10, $12 an hour. So the minimum wage is already there. So we need to start talking about maximum wage and start talking about educating our kids and then encouraging them and rehabilitating them. And the reason why I decided to get a degree in psychology is because the kids with mental issues, they don't go and see, especially in African American communities, they don't go and see a therapist or a psychologist. They go to their pastor. So I'm a pastor, guess what? I'm a slipping a little knowledge. I call it the gospel and God's pill. So I'm just telling you. So we have to do that. We have to educate, and you end up with a maximum wage because all those folks with good degrees, they're making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year, which is more than the teachers. The teachers one that's on minimum wage. We talking about finding the money. Y'all with a Republican House, they're not going to vote for those loopholes. They're going to get away. First of all, they almost shouldn't vote for them because you know who's coming here because of those loopholes? Amazon, and they talking about opening up another place. And also Toyota, bringing their plant from New York and California. They're going to employ over 10,000 people in North Dallas and Plano. So you have to be careful about what we say. We can't be old school Democrats anymore in the 21st century. That's the reason why we need to pay attention to what's going on. And that's what I have. Yeah, I was the president of Southeast Texas Toyota Dealers Association. I'm one of the people that's responsible for putting the name Toyota on top in red letters for the Rockets where they play in Houston, Texas. Oh, I'm a Dallas Maverick fan too. But my point is this, is that I thought outside the box along with my counterpart in Houston, Texas, represent 9 dealers. I was 4 dealers in, I'm in the numbers, y'all. 4 dealers in Southeast Texas. And we came up with a way to get the name up there. We paid $10 million every 5 years for that naming right. That's big business on the outside, but they remain here and stay here. Toyota's going to stay here because of those loopholes. So we need to be careful what we ask for. You just might get it, and they just might leave. Matter of fact, the guy that just did the issue with Delta, with the NRA, and talking about he's going to take the tax away, the lieutenant governor, I got about 60 seconds. The lieutenant governor, the same position I'm going for, you got to be careful. Those people will pack up and leave, and you'll be just like Detroit. I was in downtown Detroit, and you don't want what you call see-throughs. What does that mean? You're at the top of the high-rise, and you can see all the way downtown because nobody is there. That is not a place to be. In Houston, Texas, and my opponent would tell you, which is my friend, in Houston, Texas, 1986, when you had the oil crisis, you had the same problem. You got to be careful what you ask for. You better talk to me later on about that because we need to talk.
All right.
Hey, thank you. Does anyone else want to respond to that? Are there any more questions from the audience?
My daughter has graduated from college, and she's been looking, she has a job, but she wants a better job. But the jobs that she can apply for, they're telling her she's not qualified. Well, how is she ever going to get into that position if they don't allow her, you know, if they don't hire her? They're always going to keep telling her she's not qualified. It's, I don't understand, because you tell our kids, go to school, get a good education, go to college, you know, get your degrees, and then when you get in a field, you can get a good job, but then she can't get a good job if they don't hire. I don't understand. There's some that say, well, she's too overqualified. Well, she needs a job. She has a job, but she would like a better job, because she is an independent woman, but she needs to live. So I don't understand. Maybe y'all can do something. Even if there's low, I know there's internships, but there needs to be internships that are paying. Yeah. So I don't know if that's something y'all can kind of get boosted up, because it's hard for a person to get a job, and they apply, they go to school, they get their degrees, and then they go and apply for jobs, and people tell them, well, no, you don't have any experience to get to the job, so I don't understand.
Who wants to tackle the response to that?
I'm happy to take that on.
Okay, Mike, and include your closing remarks.
Okay, and because it happens to a lot of people. and young people make decisions around what degrees to get. They're motivated by things that they enjoy, they're motivated by friends that are in those degree plans, and it's hard to know whether or not it's going to lead you to being able to get a good paying job. And so people, they find themselves in a bad spot where they've put all this time and effort into a degree and then they can't go out and get a job, and it's very stressful, and it happens to lots and lots of people. And one of the number one things that we can do to solve that problem is to allow your daughter and other people in that position to get additional training and continuing education, for example, at a community college or at a night program. The surest route to finding yourself properly trained for a job that you like is to have access and ability to go to get that training. Now, what you hear from a lot of people is, well, how do I do that? I mean, I've got to pay rent, and I've got to have transportation, and I've got to put food on the table, and that means I've got to work 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 hours, and because I'm not in that good paying job, I can barely make ends meet. Now, how in the world am I going to improve my position and get that extra training or that extra degree? Which leads me to the fundamental point, which is that people that are working hard and want to go to the next level because they want access to community college, they ought to be able to do that free of charge, right? So better yourself. When we think about raising tax money and then what do we do with it to make sure that our state's better so that people can be successful and really accomplish something and ultimately become taxpayers and pay the system back. We talked about some of the best money you can spend is food, some of the best money you can spend is pre-K, some of the best money you can possibly spend, tax money, is to allow your daughter to go ahead and seek additional training and education so that she can then be employed. That's what we should be doing with our tax dollars. That's how I would answer that question, and I hope that helps. And then in terms of closing remarks, I'd like to say that's linked to something that's very important to me and what I hope to accomplish in the campaign, and then ultimately, if I'm so honored as your Lieutenant Governor, is I'd like to bring compassion back to public policy and public life. And I don't know whether you agree with me or not, you probably do you? Compassion seems to be gone from Republican orthodoxy, Republican thinking. And it's a Texas value, and I want to bring it back. And I'll share with you one story. A friend of mine who's a Republican, who called me and he said, Mike, I'm going to hold my nose and I'm going to vote for you. Which is terrific. But he said, there's something on your website that I want you to take down. And I got to thinking, I wonder what that might be. I'm for a woman's right to choose. Perhaps he's going to take issue with that. We need sensible gun laws, and I have that in my website. Perhaps he's going to take issue with that. No, you know what he took issue with? Compassion. He said, take compassion off your website because that will cost you the election. Well, we're redoing the website, and compassion comes first because that's what we're campaigning against. This cold-heartedness that's overtaken the Republican Party, and it's not all of them. It's not all of the Republicans. It's just that very, very hard right who happen to run the operation. And the part assigned to us, whether we win, Michael, you and I have talked about this. If you're the nominee for Lieutenant Governor, I'm staying in this fight, and I'm going to be right at your side because that's what we're competing against. Because the hard right of the Republican Party has taken us to a place that we don't want to be. And compassion is not something they'll even talk about, but the rest of us know that compassion is a Texas value, which is why we're fighting, which is why we're going to win, we must win, and brings us back to why we're here. Vote in the primary and tell your friends to vote in the general. We can take Texas back. We can make Texas proud. Thank you very much.
I'd like to answer that one also, if that's okay.
Yes, and please include.
Okay, so thank you. I'm going to piggyback on a couple of things that you said. So I am a teacher. My family are a family of educators. And I understand what you're saying with your daughter having gone through college and then getting out and not being able to have a job. What I would like to see is that we rework our college education and your requirements to graduate. And I'm going off of education. So we will go through school for 3.5 years, and your last semester, then you student teach. And what happens if you discover in student teaching that, wow, this is not for me, and now you have a degree and you don't know what to do. And I've always said all along that no matter what your degree is, when you enter college your freshman year, your first semester, they should start doing on-hands preparation with your classes, so when you graduate, you have that experience that everybody says, what experience do you have? And you can say, this year I was at this place working and volunteering, this year I was at this place. And you can show them 4 years of work experience that ties directly into your college degree. So now not only do you have experience, but you have experience that you're going to get a bigger paycheck for. I mean, I'm a certified USA swim coach, and my kids come up to me all the time, oh, we're gonna be a swim coach. I'm like, no, you're not. You need to get a degree that pays the bills, and then if you wanna volunteer, volunteer. But the thing is that we are shortchanging our young adults by putting them through school and not letting them have that experience that they need, so when they graduate, they can go into the jobs in their field. On your daughter, I know that she's already graduated, so a change like this isn't going to be beneficial to her. But I totally agree with Mike Collier that junior college and retraining should be available to you. And if not free, then it's such a minimalistic cost that it doesn't affect your budget, and you don't have to decide, is it groceries or college? I mean, I know kids right now who make that decision. Now, when they say they live on Top Roman, I am not kidding you. That's all they eat. They can't even afford the mixed vegetables to add to it. And there is no reason for that. I mean, we're the wealthiest nation in the world. So instead of telling your daughter you have too much qualifications and then she has to dummy down her resume, or she doesn't have qualifications, then there should be programs out there for these freshly graduated students that bring them in, give them an internship, give them the experience they need, and then grow them in the companies. I mean, that's what they used to do when my grandparents were alive. The company brought you in and they wanted you to stay. They wanted you to be a company man, a company woman. They didn't want to retrain you. So I personally feel like that's the direction that we need to start taking our public education and our college education, is so that everybody, when you do graduate, you can walk into that job and say, here's my experience and this is what I need in salary. So did I have time to close, or did I use it all in my answer? Okay, so I am Jenny Lou Leader. I am a very proud 7th generation Texan, as you have known from tonight, from a family of educators, but my father also farms the property that my great-grandfather immigrated from Germany and purchased. We haven't talked about immigration up here tonight. We haven't talked about a lot of things that impact our nation. Education, healthcare, infrastructure, immigration, no wall, thank you very much. Those are the things that I have campaigned on, not only since July 27th when I announced at my Democratic Women's meeting, but my entire life. Those are the building blocks to the United States of America. And if those building blocks are firm and they are put together without cracks, then our nation will succeed and we will be the greatest nation in the United States of America. And I just ask for your support in getting me to that place. Eric is a great guy, but darn it, I want to take on Mike Collier in November. So please, 3 things. Give me your vote in Tuesday if you haven't already voted, then again in November. Go to the website, like and follow us, and volunteer to get our message out. Jenny Lou Leader for U.S. Congress. Thank you.
Okay, I want to move down to Adrian at this point, and we'll start with closing
Sure.
remarks.
Any other questions out there?
We don't have time.
I'll put it in there. Go ahead, ma'am.
I read in the paper and hear it all the time that the Democrats can't get their message across. They can't get a concise message.
Sure.
Do you feel like that's a problem? And if it is, do you think there's a way to solve that problem?
I do think it's a problem. I'm going to address in my closing that problem. I'll address $15 minimum wage, and I'll address training. All of these things, and I think the message we need to take, and I'm telling you, everywhere I've gone, this message of structural change resonates with people. And the reason it resonates with me is because there's every scenario you look at, you can address structural change. $15 minimum wage. Why will it work? Why will it not work? Because what you have to understand about companies is that some companies have the margin, some companies don't. If you started asking went to Arby's and you said, we're going to implement a $15 minimum wage. You are still leaving the mechanics. You're still leaving the mechanics of the decision to whoever manages that Arby's or whoever owns all Arby's. At that point, they're going to say, well, hey, I have $15 minimum wage. I either reduce my staff, increase the price of your roast beef and whatever it is, roast beef and cheddar, whatever you order from Arby's, or I decide that I'm going to ask people to work longer hours. That's a structural problem right there, okay? This structural change happens all the time. You want to talk about training, we have to talk about technology-enabled displacement, which I also talk about all the time. Technology-enabled displacement. You don't have to take my word for it. Robert Kaplan, our federal president of the Dallas Fed, talks about this and has been talking about this for 2 years. You can watch MSNBC, CNBC. There's a lot of companies out there talking about technology-enabled displacement. Why? I'll talk very briefly. You have a self-driving car that goes from L1 to L5. L1, you've seen these cars, you push a button, it self-parks itself. L5, there's no steering wheel, there's no gas pedal. You basically get in the car, you tell it where to go, and it'll take you there. Elon Musk earlier this year introduced the all-electric 18-wheeler. You put the self-driving technology inside the 18-wheeler, what happens to your entire population of 18-wheeler drivers? What happens to the insurance rates? What happens to the people that are working as cops who do traffic citations? See, but you no longer need those. Why? The self-driving car doesn't actually crash. Humans crash. We make errors. We have 2 sensors. A car will have multiple sensors. This is large structural changes that are facing our society. So when you know there's this feeling, and if you ask people, are we going in a good direction or are we going in a bad? Everybody says we're going in a bad direction. They don't know how the language is to talk about it. It's to talk about structural change and give very specific examples as to what those structural changes are that are impacting it. That to me is the unifying theme, and I said it and I say it everywhere. And by the way, I say it publicly, and my fear is this. I say whatever party talks about structural change doesn't just win this election, but wins all future elections. I say that publicly. What do you think my fear is? My fear is we won't talk about it. We won't put candidates that talk about it, and the other party will. Further solidifying their unifying thing. And in terms of your education, ma'am, I'm going to tell you, even at Princeton University, you can look at this race right now. I go to Princeton, I graduate #1 in my MBA cohort. Ask yourself, before today, did you hear about me? So this happens all along. You see, you're not qualified to be governor. You're too young to be governor. You don't have the intellect to be governor. This happens all over. You can't even go to the #1 institution in the country and graduate #1 from an MBA before you get told, no, wait your turn. It happens every time. You're going to have to fight, and you're going to have to look at structural change to make sure that you as a system can even do that. We're going to have to start addressing that. Thank you very much. Adrian Oseguela, you still got time to vote. It's Tuesday. And I won't be always so angry. TexasReason.com. Thanks.
Howdy, y'all. I'm going to close and make this real simple. We've spoken about honesty, we've spoken about transparency. Right now, I'm facing not only on the Republican side, but on the Democratic side, people that aren't being honest. My opponent on the Democratic side is an oil and gas lawyer from New Mexico that moved here less than 5 years ago, voted for the first time 15 months ago. He doesn't like to say that because it sounds a lot nicer when he says, I'm a lawyer, or I'm someone that's been a rancher. I believe in honesty. I believe in transparency. On top of that, I believe in teamwork. I believe that it takes all of us working together, each and every single person. I believe that we need someone that's scientific-minded, someone that's going to give us practical solutions, not just more lip service or more explanations or more passing the buck. We need the long-term solutions. But I can't do it alone. Like I said, I need your help. I need you to work not in front of me, not behind me, but beside me. And let's build a better Texas together. My name is Tex Morgan. I appreciate your support. I've had a lovely time here tonight. And thank you for doing this. It's wonderful, wonderful to have these conversations. God bless you all, and God bless Texas.
Closing remarks? Well, first off, I want to thank you for inviting me. And I want to thank my wife, who's in the back, for pushing me to run when she told me to stop complaining and do something about it. She's been listening to me talk about my ideas, which the polling is just one of them, for years. I've been thinking about them since I was a teenager. And we need people with ideas running. If you have been in office for 20 years and you still have not gotten your ideas through, maybe they weren't so good. Maybe it's time to get somebody in there who has better ideas, different ideas. Maybe they'll take your ideas, take off some of the not so good, make it better. We need new blood, we need new people, we need new ideas. I want to poll people, I want to create apps so that everybody can read every bill that comes out, respond to those bills, and let their politicians know exactly what they think. And then when their politicians vote the way the lobbyists want, people will know that immediately, and then vote them out. We need accountability. We need people out there learning about politics, learning what's going on, and then telling people what they think. We need to look at Europe and how they've done education, health care. We need to find the best thing each country did, take it, put them all together and make it American, make it better. We don't have to take the bad parts, we can just take the good ones. That is what we do. That is why we need immigration. We get people in with new ideas, new thoughts, new cultures, new ideas, new foods. We need that. And if we block it off, then, if we blocked it off several years ago, we wouldn't have the euro. I love those. We need more blood in Congress, in America. We need the ideas. And hopefully, people will hear what I've said, and 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you're going to see a whole slew of people who never thought they'd ever run for office. And you're going to see them sitting right here. That is what I want to see. People who would never, ever think of running for office, but they've got those ideas coming out. So, take my cards, go visit my Facebook. I'm not looking for donations, I'm looking for people to talk about me. Just talk. Thank you.
Well, what do you all think?
Wow.
Let's give our candidates another big San Angelo.